Hello, welcome to this LinkedIn Live event. We are here at the Farnborough Air Show, and I'm joined with two of my esteemed colleagues. And today we're here to talk about the discussion around sustainment and MRO for maintenance, repair, and overhaul. This is a critical conversation and a critical discussion within our industry. It's certainly where there's a lot of focus of these last couple of years, and it's where our companies really see quite a bit of profit uplift over time. And so today we wanted to just chat a little bit about what this means, what you're hearing from the air show, and what we can really take away from these last couple of days here. Quick introductions, Rudy, Stacy.
Good morning. Again, Rudy Sleiman, Global Aerospace and Defense Leader for the firm. Appreciate the time here. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Yeah, Stacy, Dyer, our Product Development Lead for Europe and across the UK. Yeah, been really enjoying our time at Farnborough Air Show and looking forward to talk a bit more about aircraft sustainment today.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. The global maintenance, repair, and overhaul market for both the commercial and the defense aerospace side is valued at about $115 billion, and they're projected to do that by 2030. On the commercial side, airline MRO expenses account for about 10 to 15% of the total operating costs. And in the commercial space, they tend to undergo different aircraft services and MRO activity on taking about 12 hours every 10 months or so. So based on that, there's incredible growth in this market space. What do you think is driving the growth of this particular domain in both the commercial and the defense side?
So thanks, Lindsey. So I would say a lot of things have to do with a bunch of aspects. One of them is aging aircrafts, both on the commercial and on the defense side. Increased commercial traffic has been, as we've been seeing it, it's been increasing on a year-to-year basis, and mostly around keeping those planes upkept and also the quick turnarounds that are required, plus the issues around supply chain, and then obviously around building those MROs, and there's been a lot around outsourcing most of those MROs out there. So there's a number of factors that are affecting this, and so it's driving the cost, it's driving demand, and so many other factors.
Fleet readiness is one of the most critical metrics here, and I do expect that it's going to continue to grow, to your point, for some of those exact features that you were just mentioning. What else in terms of the way that from a geopolitical standpoint is starting to impact the way that we think about MRO services across the globe and across different geographies?
Well, obviously with all the global, as we know, the global conflicts that are going on right now, the deliveries of aircrafts, the demands, as I mentioned, the quick turnarounds, new technologies are a huge factor. And then there is a huge demand on new systems, new transformation. So all this plays a big factor into what we're trying to do. And so what puts on a lot of pressure when it comes to quick turnarounds of those airplanes. So, and then with some of those technologies and some AI coming into the picture and so forth, there needs to be a whole new factor around MRO employee training and so forth. So there's a number of factors that are impacting this. So all the companies, the OEMs and manufacturers and the airlines are really taking this into serious consideration as they move out.
Well, speaking of technology advances, I think that this domain specifically is just ripe for improvement when you think about what's happening with cloud technologies, AI that's coming through, and other ways that we can think about predictive maintenance. So speaking to that, what do you really foresee in terms of what's going to be most impactful in this space relative to technology advances, and what are you most excited about?
Yeah, great question. It's something that I'm asked a lot by my clients, actually, especially as product development lead. That's some of the key questions that I'm asked. So, in leading some of Rudy's points, actually what we're seeing around effective sustainment is how aircrafts are basically in service for longer. We're seeing that actually more the aircraft sustainment is plus 10 years more than it was before and previously, meaning that aircraft are now in the air for 20 to 30 years. And with that becomes more usage, more maintenance, and therefore the use of technology is really, really important. And we're seeing things like model-based systems engineering, which is a huge shift in the market. And if those of you who have not heard about model-based systems engineering, it's how you use the virtual verification and the power of kind of technology to really test that you're going to meet your requirements and what you want from your aircraft, and therefore sustainment and those kind of things is a big requirement of an aircraft. So using those technologies, allowing you to verify your product and that it will go longer in service and those kind of things. So that virtual systems engineering, model-based system engineering is a big thing. But of course, we're also seeing the use of AI to allow those things and etc. in sort of emerging technologies like that as well.
Yeah, and if I just may add, with all this new technology, people have to adapt. So there's been a lot of these people that work in the MROs and sustain the airplanes have been doing things the old way. So it's become a bit of an employee turn, not saying turnaround, but people kind of adapting and learning a new way of doing things. So it's another things that senior executives of companies all have to think about as they move forward.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. And we talk about sustainment of the aircraft, but there's also the conversation around sustainability that was big highlight at the air show this year, relative to clean energy, sustainable air fuels, et cetera. What role do you think sustainability itself will play in this particular space over the coming years in the MRO market?
I like your linkage between sustainment and sustainability. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, again, a massive market trend that we're seeing across all markets, and aerospace and defence is certainly not exclusive of that. As we're seeing, there are regulations coming in, legislations, California climate disclosure, plastic tax, carbon taxes, the recent EU eco-design regulation, which actually looks at products and how they're being designed. And that's all really shifted and gearing towards making sure any product is more sustainable. Okay, and yeah, as I said, aerospace and defence is not exclusive from that. So, what's that doing to MRO and aftermarkets? Well, companies were seeing a huge shift in how they're ramping up their sustainability practices and how they're thinking about that. We're seeing big push in things like circular economy. So actually how you reduce waste, reduce, recycle, remanufacture, those kind of things, how you use that on a product as well. And actually, it's quite an easy, transferable way of working in the aerospace and defence industry, because if you think, we've always disposed of these products, but now we're thinking about how we dispose of them in a sustainable manner and how we reuse them. We're seeing some really emerging trends with, 3D printing and such like, and recycling of critical minerals and how we can reuse them on the aircraft and stuff like that, which is really, really exciting and very positive in the move towards a more sustainable future.
Mm-hmm. And linking back to the concept of model-based engineering, to be able to use technology like that to model and simulate what those future outcomes could be will be critically important for this space as we go forward.
Yeah, in the use of, the use of kind of your product definition right at the start of the life cycle, where you're using things like AI for generative design, but generative design with the lens of sustainability on it is allowing to get to new prototypes quicker to then release them into the market with the sustainability lens on them as well.
Yeah.
And if I just may add, even with all this new eco-friendly technologies and so forth, it's also putting a demand on supply chains and cross-border supply chains, especially, and having everybody be ready and trying to, as they move forward with this new concepts.
Completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's maybe pivot and talk a little bit about the strategies that are going to be necessary to implement MRO services as we go forward. And Stacy, maybe one more question for you. As this MRO market grows, what are some of the key strategy areas that the industry players must be aware of?
Well, firstly, there's the sort of regulatory elements. They've got to be aware of that. They've got to understand what they're doing in terms of kind of the regulations, where they're going, those kind of things. The other one would be around kind of operational efficiency. They've got to make sure that they're operating correctly, and that actually they're getting all the information that they need around how to operate. That allows them to do things like cost management and making sure that they're still making the products and being profitable. That is the most important thing. And then ultimately into like customer satisfaction as well and things like that.
Yes.
So making sure that the client is satisfied and the customer is satisfied with the end product, especially in the aircraft and defence space, is very important.
Responsiveness, and I'd say also, to your point, satisfaction, but also the ways that they can collaborate with their supplier. I think that's been a big focus as of late that I've seen, is how do you really think about the interactions in the MRO space, whether that be with the supply base, whether that be with the customer. What do they understand of the problem at hand and how to get their aircraft back in the air?
Yeah, and actually, if you think about, and one of the key takeaways I'll talk about that I've seen from the Farnborough Air Show is about actually how we're now seeing, tier 1, tier 2 suppliers and a large component of the software suppliers wanting to collaborate together in a more efficient manner. And therefore, if you think about things like, GCAP and the latest technology in aircraft and stuff like that, sixth generation fighter, how you have to collaborate as a set of countries, a set of companies, and a set of software as well. It's trickling all the way down your digital transformation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the thing is, just speaking to many of these OEMs at the show, the number one subject has been around MROs and sustainment. As most of these aircraft are being delivered, and some of the ones that are even through foreign military sales or even commercial airplanes, they're very concerned about who's going to actually do the wrench turning, who's going to do some of the maintenance, and even on a lot of the predictive analytics and everything that come into play, it's a big concern. So something that they're really concerned, focusing on right now.
Absolutely.
So Rudy, maybe one add-on to that then. If you had to pick one area, based on your conversations that you've had these last couple of days, what is the one area that you think is most important relative to MRO services and what they need to do to provide the right capability?
I would say transformation is a big deal. Digital transformation, using digital tools, more efficient, reducing cost. All those things come into play. So, but again, it adds a sense of complexity into the whole way of doing things, the modern, especially with modern aviation coming into play, and air mobility and so forth. So there's all that stuff has to come in come into play into what they're doing. So, and the other thing I mentioned, digital twin is a big deal right now with a lot of these companies. So how is it that we can do a digital twin on an aircraft or a part and get it out, and instead of shipping and so forth. So there's many factors that come into this. So it's definitely some of the major concerns, but also it's a better way of looking at things and to be a lot more efficient.
And if I could jump on the sort of digital twin, one of the other emerging trends we're seeing is the use of the digital thread, right?
Yeah,
So actually, especially if you think about design, make, move, operate, the way that we're now threading that data and those digital twins to use them through different scenarios of the product lifecycle, especially when it comes into MRO, how we can take that kind of in-service information and feed it back to the design to make sure we're taking any of those quality challenges, any of those product enhancements, connected products as well, actually getting real-time data now back into the design. The importance of that digital thread is becoming, I personally feel, is really percolating to the top of companies' agendas now.
Yeah, and the big thing too, Lindsey, is the fact of, it's kind of demand on new skills for the manpower, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
when it comes to that, but again, at the end of the day, it's going to be a process of a lot more efficient way of getting things done, cost-effective landscape across the board when it comes to airline maintenance and airplane maintenance and even any platform maintenance. So it's quite important.
Yeah, in the course of that conversation, you guys talked a little bit about the evolving trends, especially around aircraft production. And when we think about electrification and how that's really coming to the surface, Lithium had their aircraft here at the air show today, and I know last year in Paris that was also highly featured. How do you think that shifts the MRO landscape as more of that type of aircraft gets in the sky?
Well, obviously with electrification, it's less parts, right? Less parts, less maintenance, more demand on specialized workforce, as I mentioned earlier. So that is something that's going to be advantageous to the companies, to the manufacturers, to the airlines. But again, it's a whole new way of looking at things. But again, it's going to end up being a lot more effective landscape across the board when it comes to this type of technology.
Yeah, and sort of I'd completely agree, and add to that is that, it's actually, some of these companies now are learning from 20, 30 years, even longer, of doing like product development on a traditional kind of product they have. But they're thinking about now, how can I bring in the latest technology? How can I do the latest ways of working? What would I do differently if I had my chance to design and manufacture this and maintain this product again? And that's really nice to see. It's really nice to see that actually, the top companies out there that, we all get lucky enough to work with are taking on that mantle of how can I bring in technology with sustainability, with profitability, maintenance, and all of those things that we've all talked about when we talk about design for X in particular. Now there's many facets to that design for X, but we've got the technology and we're starting to emerge with the ways of working now of how to bring all of that together to get a product such as, like battery aircraft and stuff like that, which, probably 10, 15 years ago we wouldn't have even thought was even possible.
Right. Well, and you speak about design for acts. In the case of electrification, it strikes me that we're also going to have to design for the infrastructure at hand.
Correct.
And so how do we go back to the idea of collaboration with your suppliers, with your customers, but also with the state and local agencies
true.
to make sure
Yeah.
that you can actually fly these types of aircraft in the future. So as you're seeing that from an MRO space, how do they think about the connectivity of their ecosystems and using technology to be able to make those different point connections?
Yeah, and you see this in other industries as well, using systems on systems approach, right? So if you think about a car, the way that or even your iPhone and your iWatch, how it's got sensors on it, that if it detects stuff, it automatically goes to the emergency services. Well, that's exactly the same that were happening in the aerospace and defence with MRO. You're getting that kind of early warning that there's a problem, and that actually how can they find the most effective route to get that aircraft to ground, to get the parts there where it needs to be. Can they do it through innovative thinking like 3D printing, for instance, rather than having to ship parts around the world? There are things where those kind of technologies are coming in, but working with the local governments and all the regulators to make sure that actually they're aligned and they're looking at infrastructure that's needed for things like, battery charging and all of those kind of things. And yes, the OEMs have a responsibility to make a product, but also the countries and the regulatory requirements within those countries have a responsibility to make sure that they have an infrastructure that can support that product and that aircraft.
And there's two parts to it, right? So it all depends on the mission requirements. Depending, right, if it's in a combat platform versus a commercial platform, what is required? Are you looking at hybrid technologies or full electric and so forth? So they have to adapt to kind of both scenarios. So it makes a difference. And we're starting to see a lot of those companies going that route and demonstrating, and we're seeing it at Farnborough. We've seen it at other shows. So it's definitely a big move that's happening right now.
It's really exciting times when you think about it, actually.
Yeah, quite the shift in the industry, which is fantastic. All right, well, I know our time is quickly coming to a close. Are there any closing thoughts that either of you have on this topic and future of MRO?
I think it's an exciting time right now. It's just funny how things have really shifted towards this. Every discussion we get into, and even last night at a dinner, just one of the executives approached me and says, we really like the way you guys are thinking. We really like the way everybody's thinking in sustainment. That's the big push. That's where we see the money is. A lot of people are kind of leaving money at the table when it comes to that. So they're really focusing on this on this piece, and it's something that we definitely and everybody's kind of driving towards. So absolutely.
I think to echo Rudy's point, really, it's a very exciting time in terms of what we're seeing in terms of shift in the market. But actually, I think for the first time in my career, I'm seeing the shift in market, but being able to bring 3 or 4 market trends together at once and actually say, do you know what, if we bring the best of this technology, it will answer the best of this market demand, and it will also ensure that we are, cost effective and making a profit as a business. And actually, those kind of elements coming together, you don't often see that. So I'm really excited about that, all of those shifts coming together at one point, and really being at the epicenter of that as well.
Yeah, to your point, exciting times. I think a lot of convergence and a lot of ways that this is going to come together. Well, thank you so much for the time today, gentlemen. I appreciate the discussion, and we will talk to you soon.